back for another episode. This is Tuesday Counseling Podcast, episode 4. Girls, how we doing?
Good. I'm excited.
Everyone having a good day and week so far?
A
Yep.
busy week. Yeah.
It is going to be a very busy week for sure.
Oh, yeah. Aaron, you're traveling. You have a
I
trip.
am. I'm going on a trip. My clients have been like, where are you going?
Oh, wait, have you shared?
Well, I've just said because I've needed to shift some things around because I'm gone Thursday to Wednesday. So I'm just moving my Thursday people up a little bit, and then my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday people, I'm trying to squeeze them into the Thursday. And so nothing is really changing scheduling wise. I'm not really canceling on anyone. But they're all like, where are you going? You're leaving?
I want to know.
You have a life. You have a life outside of being my therapist. You leave the 4 walls of this office.
It's like when you see your teacher in the grocery store when you're a kid and you're like,
wait a minute.
No. You're like, you don't live at school? You don't sleep there and eat all your meals there? That's so fun though, Erin. Are you, okay, talking about a self-disclosure, are you disclosing where you're traveling to clients, or are you just saying
I'm going somewhere in the world.
Just away. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been telling people.
Will you tell the audience? Will you tell our loyal fans?
Yes, hello everyone. I am going to Costa Rica.
Right.
I'm very excited. I'm not a traveler, so I never really traveled. I traveled for soccer when I was little, but that was always just in the United States, and so traveling isn't really my thing. And so I started dating someone that loves to travel all the time, and so that's been part of my bit too, of when people ask, I'm like, it really wasn't me. If it were up to me, yeah, hey, not my fault. Don't blame me. Let's play the blame game, and it's not my fault. So yeah, I've been telling people. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It feels weird not to. I feel we talked about this last week. If people are like, oh, where are you going?
Well, and sometimes people, I've noticed my clients have great recommendations, right? If they've been there before, they'll be like, well, you have to go here.
Yeah.
That's been fun to hear.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely gotten that from clients before, and I'm always like,
Good
I will use that recommendation. Yeah.
We'll be there.
There's part of me that's very wary about people that don't really have the means to travel, and traveling is a privilege. And I mean, granted,
good point.
My significant other knows how to ball on a major budget, and he is Mr. Deal guy, so he knows how to find all of those things. And so we when he travels, and for this trip we've been able to do it relatively inexpensively for what it is. But I've been very wary of telling people for that reason, because I know that traveling is a privilege, and
that's interesting. Yeah,
not wanting to elote what I'm able to do with my finances in front of my clients, but also I don't know, it feels weirder to not answer. It feels weirder to be like,
yeah,
why are you curious about where I'm traveling to? Probably because you're just curious.
Yeah. I'm just making conversation. I'm just being polite. That feels like such a common, just a courtesy thing to ask when someone says that.
If someone says they're going somewhere, it feels like the natural next response. Well, where are you going?
Yeah.
Or a connection.
Right.
I do think that's important though, to consider the optics, I guess, of travel. Or I've noticed sometimes one time I went and saw my therapist in person, and I'm like, her shoes are way more expensive than anything I ever have owned in my life.
Huh.
She made a self-disclosure just by wearing those shoes that day, and she could have gotten them as a gift. She could have gotten them secondhand, whatever. But that was something I noticed enough to be like, oh, so she has money. Yeah. And I feel travel can be such the same way, even if you're a big bargain, really good at like finding super cheap flights or hotels or whatever, it is still expensive, but it can come off a certain way. So I feel
Well,
like
I
it is
think
mindful of that.
growing up for me, traveling was a huge privilege. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had friends that went on trips like every summer and like all the time, and like that was so for me it was like traveling is not just something that like you do. Like it's not just like a normal thing that people do all the time. And so I think maybe that's why I'm a little bit more aware of it, of like what I'm doing is crazy. But anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll say, Erin, I feel like that is a really natural segue into what was actually going to be our topic for today anyway, which is, I guess, this idea of like, how do you, as a person who is also a therapist, but you're really primarily just a person like any other person, like, how do you balance those two things? How much of the personhood that you have do you let show up in the room as a therapist? How much of yourself do you show versus how much do you conceal? And I feel like what you're saying with the traveling, kind of self disclosure, that's a really big piece of it.
Totally. I think my clients get most of me, to be honest.
Mhm.
Like I feel like we were just talking about this, Madeline, but like I feel like my friends would probably describe me similarly to my clients.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I think as therapists, like we are working on congruence with our clients. Like how do we become aligned with the most authentic version of ourselves? And
Mhm.
so showing up authentically and genuinely for my clients, I think is a huge piece of that, of like modeling, like I am the same person in here and out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I think about a lot is like how much of yourself you bring into the room. And I would say maybe the hardest part for me as a therapist is our job. And I think this is an expectation that I just have of myself is showing up as my full self, as my best self every day, right? People are coming
Mhm.
to you and trusting you. So there's a level of pressure that I think is mostly internal pressure. No one's ever said this of I need to show up as my best self. And the reality of being human, you're not always your best self, right? Things go on in your personal life. You didn't sleep well the night before, you missed lunch or you missed breakfast, you forgot your coffee, like all of these things. And that's something I consider a lot is if, am I able to show up as my best self? And I've worked a lot on the self-compassion piece of I will show up and some days I will get it wrong, right? Some days I will be
Mhm.
tired. And that doesn't mean that I don't really try to be intentional. But that's the part of myself that I try to leave at the door, right?
Yeah.
I try to be able to show up and be present and not let all of those things show up in the room. But I think similar to what Erin said, I think my clients would describe me similarly to my friends. I think working with children is funny. I would be curious how they would describe me. I think I, of course, show up a little bit differently, but I'll say one thing about working with kids, they'll ask you about any question. And that's a fun part.
Mhm.
But I think I show up differently, obviously, with kids than I would. I would share more with adult clients than maybe I would with kids. Of like, when I
Mhm.
have to cancel for things. Of well, what happened when you needed to cancel? Like I'll give them
Mhm.
as much information as they need to understand. But of course, there's a
Yeah.
level there.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it very much depends, kind of varies person to person about what they feel is most comfortable for them and most like therapeutic from them. But yeah, I feel like I kind of feel similarly to y'all of I don't feel very different when I'm like in session versus when I'm like hanging out with my friends or with my family. Like I don't feel like I'm a different person. Obviously I'm going to share different things and like talk about different things, but my personality I don't think changes very much. And I wonder if maybe that's kind of a thing that evolves maybe the more you practice. Like I don't know that I could have said that with like my first year of seeing clients.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
like,
I
a
probably
little nervous.
yeah. I probably couldn't either. I'm sure I think my first like at least in my internship when I was seeing clients, it was very much like I was not that I don't think I'm chaotic in session. If you're my client and you're listening to this, if I am
Don't answer.
chaotic, don't answer.
I don't want to hear it.
But I think in my internship when I was seeing clients, I was a much more reserved, maybe a much more like subdued version of myself.
Yeah.
Um, not as not as like emotive. I was told in grad school that my face was very demonstrative, that you knew exactly what I was thinking just by looking at my face, and that I needed to tone it down. So I think in internship,
Which,
I tried to do that, and then I realized that just doesn't work, and that's not the kind of therapist I want to be. So
yeah, yeah. I feel like it's such a balance of finding the type of therapist that feels most authentic to you and being that, also kind of a safe therapist role for a client. Like that can be a hard thing to navigate. But yeah, like too demonstrative, I think is hilarious. Just like a really specific piece of feedback for you. I guess how do you feel like your ability to emote helps you as a therapist? It's kind of a softball question, but I feel like it is important to talk about.
yeah, I think sometimes our body language and like our facial expressions can be just as validating as words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like we were taught that in grad school a lot of like your face says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently my face said a lot. And so I think I'm able to like show empathy and care and compassion for my clients, or like that I'm tracking with them very well. Like they know it's a very good tool for like active listening, I think, for me. Um, my clients always know that I'm locked in, um, because I'm
Oh
following
yeah.
the story with my eyebrows usually. Um, and I think sometimes it can match the energy that your client is giving off well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like if my client like came in and like slammed the door and sat down and was like, he cheated on me, like, and I was like, oh, like that's
That was
so
a big deal.
lame. Like,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they come in and slam the door and sit on the couch and say he cheated on me, I'm going to be like, what?
Yeah.
And so I think being demonstrative and like having your facial expressions and allowing yourself to like react like a human being would,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, can allow your client to feel safer and more comfortable and more understood and validated and heard. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And how much nonverbals are a way of communicating. I remember looking
Mm-hmm.
back on a video, like, you have to record sessions sometimes, and I was nodding my head like the entire time, which was interesting to me, but in a way it was me of saying like I'm yes, like I am hearing you, I'm listening, I'm in tune with you. I realized I may need to like nod my head a little bit less because it was a lot. But just how naturally, or like when you lean in and the client's leaning in, right? Like just being able to
Mm-hmm.
connect in that way. But how much of communication does happen non-verbally, whether that's through someone's facial expressions or body language.
Ah.
Say like I use my hands a lot, which right to some clients like that may not be ideal, but it's a way that I communicate non-verbally with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that it says as much or maybe more than our words could say. And I think that that's something we learn early on as therapists is like you could be the most like brilliantly trained analytic therapist that's ever worked. But like if your body language is off or your energy is off or the vibes are off, like doesn't matter. It's not going to matter at all. And I think it is so much matching the energy of the person that you're with almost. Like what I'm hearing you say, Erin, is like if someone comes in and they're like, you will not believe the shit that just happened to me, you're not going to be like, I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to learn.
no, like,
Like that would be really, really weird. You're going to match their energy and their enthusiasm as long as it's therapeutically appropriate and foster that sense of connection. Versus if your client is like very subdued and very like, calm and tranquil, you're not going to be like bouncing off the walls. You're going to meet them where they're at. But yeah, I think it absolutely is very person to person. And I think there are probably therapists that are very blank slate and just classically trained to do it that way, and that probably works for lots of people. Couldn't be us. We've got eyebrows that do a lot of moving for us. We've got a lot of movement with our hands all the time. Like that's just not the kind of therapist we are, and that's okay.
I
The
think it's
clients that stick
natural.
around are the clients that appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. The ability to
Um, hmm hmm Well, so one thing that someone had actually, this is important. The reason we're talking about this is because someone had put this as a requested topic on our form, which, if you didn't know about that, you can go to the link in our bio and you can ask, like, hey, I'd really like for you guys to talk about this thing or that thing. And we'll talk about it. Case in point, we're talking about it right now. But the person who asked if we could talk about this had kind of asked us, like, to quote them, like, bringing your humanness into session, what to share versus what not to share. I guess, like, that could look like self disclosure. That could look like kind of like bringing snacks into session, bringing drink, like, there's so much I think that could go into that question. But I guess, like, how much of yourself are you willing to let into the therapy room? Like maybe that's the question we start off with. I know we've kind of answered that in a roundabout way up until now.
Yeah. I'm trying to find where the line is, and this may be something that I like consider in the moment of, is this
Mm-hmm.
therapeutically helpful for my client for me to disclose this
Mm-hmm.
information? And I'm thinking of like what I mentioned earlier, of like the parts that I try to leave outside is like what's going on outside of the therapy room for me, like challenges that I'm facing outside of work, or like tiredness levels, or like I try to like care for myself as much as I can outside of it so that piece doesn't come in. Maybe if you're
Mm-hmm.
getting self-disclosure, I think that's an interesting question. I tend to follow the client's lead, right? Like if they're asking questions, I typically think there's a reason they're asking that question, whether it just be simply because they want to connect with me, they're curious about me, they want to know more. And I think I said this a few times ago, I've never not answered a question. Um, uh, a few minor clients who have asked me questions, there have been times that I have not answer those questions. But it was not
Fair.
therapeutically maybe appropriate to answer those questions. There were silly questions. But for my adult clients, I've never been asked a question that I didn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
don't know how much I bring up. And I don't tend to bring up anything about my life in session unless it's brought up by the client first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Appropriate self-disclosure, I feel like, is a big thing of,
Great
is
question.
it relevant?
Mm-hmm.
The quantity of it, the content of it, like, is that something that's appropriate to share?
Would have been a better.
Sometimes no. Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes yes. I'll let you answer that question, Aaron, before I take us on a whole other trail, which my mind just cued me towards.
About how much I bring into session.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, this morning I like ate a Cliff Bar and had like a protein smoothie in session. So like I'm fine. I think especially working with like disordered eating and body image, I think like modeling kind of just like that is important too, of like, this is okay. Like, do you want to do it with me? Like, because we can do it together and that's cool.
Yeah.
And just kind of normalizing that a little bit. So I have snacks in the office, especially if like my clients, yeah, especially if like they're coming like from work or like lunch or and they don't bring their lunch or something. I don't know. Eating in session, love.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if I have like multiple back-to-backs and I haven't really had a break. I'm like, well, and I always ask, I'm like, are you good if I like have a Cliff Bar real quick? Like I'll be done kind of like 10-15 minutes in. Like I'm not going to be munching on this the entire session.
Yeah.
But I do need it, and like I need to take care of myself and I need to take care of my body. And this is me doing that. And so honestly, like modeling, like taking care of myself in session and out of session too.
Yeah.
So that's my take. I mean, yeah, there isn't a question that I haven't answered. I take that back. There are questions I haven't answered. But Yeah, I feel like I agree with Avery. Like things that are happening kind of in my personal life. Like I will let people know things about my personal life. Like my dog,
Hmm.
a lot of my clients like know exactly what my dogs look like,
Hmm.
Very
because
sure.
I love them. And I'm like, do you want to see
Yeah.
Timothy Chalamet? Because he's the cutest thing alive. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I would love to show
Yeah.
you. And also, like, I feel like so much of my self disclosure honestly pops up in like the first or last 5 to 10 minutes of session when we're literally just like yapping about like whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Before we really dive into like, okay, what do we really want to process today? What feels important? Um, there's usually, I feel like there's not bits and pieces maybe, but there's not like regular self-disclosure in like the bulk of
Mhm.
session. It's usually just in the like, hey, what's up? What's going on? How has your week been? Kind of those rhythms.
Totally. Totally. I feel like there is kind of a debate about snacking in session, like
There is.
for or
Really.
against that. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I have posted about maybe having a snack in session with a client's consent. Like we were both having a snack because I was having back to backs or whatever. And someone commented one time and was like, "That is so inappropriate. Like I would never see a therapist that like ate something in session." Fair enough. That's why we ask.
Yeah.
That's why we ask first. If that makes you very uncomfortable, then I'm glad to know that. But yeah, I'm pro assuming that like I couldn't have had that snack earlier and I'm gonna really have a problem if I don't eat this right now and my client's okay with it. Like, okay.
All right. Or
Yeah.
like life happens, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
sleep through your alarm and you don't have nearly as much time to get ready before session as you thought you did.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
in order for me to show up in the best way possible, like I need to properly fuel my body. Otherwise, like,
Mhm.
like your brain needs a minimum, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to say it, but your brain needs like a minimum amount of calories a day just to like
Mhm.
function. And so it's
Yeah.
like, I am using so much of my brain in session. And so if I want to show up and be the best version of myself, like doing the best that I can to leave everything else that's going on in my life outside of the room, but like
Mhm.
I can't function well because like shit happened and I woke up late
Yeah.
and I need to eat. Like as long as my client's okay with it, like I'm going to do that so that I can be the best version of
Mhm.
myself for my client.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hot
I think
take, I guess.
Well, I mean, I didn't realize that was a hot take. I think well, one, I think a snack would distract me in session. That's maybe why I don't do it. But my workaround is a smoothie. Like if I have to like work a long
Mm.
day, I'll bring in a smoothie. People are probably like, why do you have 7 Yeti cups on your desk? Like my smoothie, my coffee, a Dr. Pepper, water, like all of the drinks. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's the only reason I wouldn't for me. I didn't realize that was a hot topic, but a smoothie is really wonderful to have to sip on throughout the day.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
really smart.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love my smoothies.
I think yeah, that's a good workaround, Avery. And I also think that what you were saying earlier, Aaron, about like the act of kind of taking care of our own needs in session kind of serves as like the modeling for how to maybe advocate for yourself and your own needs. And if my client is like starving in session and she doesn't say anything, like that would be really a bummer for me to know that she didn't feel safe enough to like
Yeah.
ask for that? And so I feel like it kind of is a reciprocal, I can do this for myself with your consent,
Mhm.
and like you have the space to do it too. Um, has there ever been a time, this is maybe TMI, where like I did not pee before this session and I'm about to pee my pants and I have to go pee right now? I've never left the middle of session to do that, but I've gotten pretty near the danger zone, if you will.
Yeah, literally my 11 o'clock. I
You're like, yeah, an hour ago.
My 10 o'clock ran a little long by my choosing. And my 11 o'clock was virtual. My 10 was in person. And of course, like I turn on my laptop dead. I don't have Wi-Fi in the office right now. We're working on it. Got it set up today. So I'm using my hotspot for my virtual sessions. So like everything is a shit show. And no, I didn't pee. And I was like sitting, crossing my legs, like moving
Mhm.
every which way.
Mhm.
I haven't
Yeah.
had to leave in the middle of session, but I've gotten close. I've gotten to the point where like it's hard for me to focus on anything else except for the fact that I am about to pee my pants.
Yeah. And that's a problem. I feel like if it's making me a really bad therapist in that moment, and I could take 5 minutes and go pee and come right back,
Go
I
piss girl.
would advocate go piss girl. I would err in favor of going instead of just like sitting there
Sorry.
and being miserable.
It was right there. The layup was right there. I had to say.
It was there.
Go piss girl.
Yeah, I teed you up for that.
I think I go to the bathroom after every single session. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
I feel like I live
Yeah.
half of my day in there. Just like going, everyone like the 5 minutes you have in between, and like just in case. It feels like when you're on a road trip and you're like, go to the bathroom just in case you have to. Like that is me in between every session. Because I drink so much water and fluids, obviously, but I have liquids throughout the day. But there have been times that it's been challenging. But
yeah. Been there. It happens to the best of us.
It does.
I think it's okay to be a person, to be like a real person in session with your clients. I don't think they are under the assumption that you're this like inconceivable, ephemeral, whatever, like ambiguous figure. Like I think they understand that you're a person too.
That was the funniest thing about starting seeing clients in person again, was like the first time that I saw all of them for the first, like since Tuesday had started and everything, they were like, you're real. You are a real person. I don't think we give enough credit to the barrier that telehealth creates.
Yeah.
Like there are things that you just don't realize that you can kind of hide or mask in a virtual session, and then you see your therapist in person and they're actually like 5 feet away from you and you're like, oh.
Wait a minute.
It's so, feels very vulnerable to be in the room sometimes.
And expectations that people have. I think I would dare to say anyone that I've first seen virtually and then in person, they'll be like, you are so tall. I must look short on camera. But that is and then
you're so tall.
It makes sense that they think that, right?
Yeah.
I'm sitting down. You don't really get to see all of me. And then when they see me in person, that is the one that's the piece of feedback I get the most.
Yeah. That is really funny, Avery. I feel like that is something that I got a lot too. Like in grad school when we were virtual and we came into class for like, whatever, the 2 years left. We'd be like, oh my God. Like, I thought you just had like short energy. And I was like, thank you. Thank you. But yeah, I mean like you don't, that is funny actually, the height.
Yeah.
Because I'll be talking to clients and they're like, they make a comment about their height and I go like, well, wait, how tall are you? And they go, oh my God, you've never seen me in person. And I'm like, no, I've only ever seen you this high.
Like half of you.
Yeah. You miss a lot of those details. But yeah, being in person is a very different experience to being virtual.
It's always fun when you do virtual and then like Erin's experience, right? When they come in person, I feel like that's just such a fun moment of like, I know you. And now I know like a different part of you because I get to see all of you and I get to see all of your nonverbals and that.
Yeah. It's like bringing it back to like body language and everything. Like you see so much more as a therapist. Like I can hide the fact that like I have been bouncing my knee the entire time that we've been doing this podcast and you would have no clue. Or like the fact that I've been like twirling my ring the entire time and you have no clue because it's just down here. And you do it, you go, like you see your therapist in person and it's like, I can see everything.
I feel like as a client, I'm like, I don't like in-person therapy. It freaks me out. I feel like I'm under a microscope. I'm like, I love you. I'll see you from here. Like, I'll see you from behind. That's scary.
That's a good question. What is like your go-to defense mechanism in therapy to like put a barrier up between you and your client? Or no, you and your therapist as the client. Mine is I would walk into my therapist's office. I would say, hi, Amanda. And I would grab a pillow from the couch and put it in my lap.
So interesting.
Interesting. Were you conscious of that?
Sometimes, no, but she was also a Gestalt therapist, so like she made me aware.
She
She let you know.
Yeah. She let you know.
She certainly did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
an
even know that
interesting
I'm
question.
self-aware enough to know what my defense mechanism is.
Huh.
Madeline seems to be
I
that she just does virtual.
I just do virtual. I just don't let my therapist see me in person.
Ever.
No,
Huh.
it's way too scary. I love virtual. I love it as a therapist. I love it as a client. But being a therapist in person is still somehow so much less scary to me than being the client in person.
Oh yeah.
Like being in the room, except I'm on the other side of the room in person,
Yeah.
fine. Doesn't bother me. But to be on the couch in person, I'm grabbing that pillow for sure.
It reminds me when you walk in, and I feel like I would do, maybe this is my defense mechanism. I'd be like, everything is so great. Everything's really good. And I feel like this happens a lot in therapy. People will come and be like, it's been a great week. And I'm like, well, tell me about your great week. And they're like, well, it's actually been an awful week. That was me. Like, I'd be like, actually, all of these things. You'd be like, it doesn't sound like it's been a good week. I'm like, you're right.
Uh-huh.
That's a really good point.
You're like, yeah.
I wasn't
No,
ready to
yeah.
go there. I needed some time.
It's like, I didn't know you were going to ask me that.
No, or mean it. Want to know a real answer. I think that's
Yeah.
something my clients learn over time. That's typically how I start, but that I will question, not question, but I'll say, well, tell me about your great week. Like, what are the highs and lows?
Mm,
Um, and they'll be like, you actually, because normally people will ask and you say like, oh, I'm good. But to
mhm.
really mean it is different. Like, I really want to know how your week has been.
Yeah. You get in such a rhythm of the transaction of, hey, how are you doing? Good. How are you? Good. Thanks. Bye. And
Mhm.
so to sit down with your therapist and learn that like how are you means that like you can be honest. And it's not just like another version of this transaction of like, oh,
Mhm.
everything's great. How are you?
Yeah.
So many of my
Yeah.
clients are like, Erin, how are you? And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't about me.
I'm fine. No, but that is such a normal like exchange to have with people, and you're not specific. You're always good. How
Mm-hmm.
are you? And so to ask that question, which is maybe defaulting to kind of that norm for us too, in some ways of like, "Ah, hi, how are you?" Like I am asking that in kind of the conversational way, but I'm also asking it as your therapist. And I think that's sometimes hard to decipher how honest to be in the first like 30 seconds of a therapy session. But I do that too. I'm like, I am so good. Like I'm amazing. Thank you so much. How are you? It's like, okay, you can be honest.
Okay.
I have potentially a ethical gray area that I would like to get your opinions on. And to you listening, whether you're a client or a therapist or neither, your thoughts on this. Snacks in session, we've talked about that. Hugging your clients. They say, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you, therapist. Can I hug you? What do you do as a therapist? Do you say yeah? Do you say no?
I hugged my client this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is like, it's very easy to tell when a client is initiating that kind of contact. And so I was always taught in grad school, like, don't go around just like hugging your clients. And like 100% agree with that, especially because like
Mm-hmm.
when you first like get to know a client, like you don't really know the extent of their trauma. Like you don't really
Right.
know like what is kind of an activator, and what isn't. But like, I had a client this morning, like literally walk into the office and be like, Erin, and like go in front. And I was like, what am
Oh,
I going to
what are
do?
you gonna
Like,
do?
Yeah.
No.
No
Get away,
hugs here.
get away, get away.
what's that line from The Emperor's New
Yeah.
Groove? No touchy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like if my clients initiate a hug, I'm going to hug them.
Yeah.
Because again, it's literally just what we were talking about last week was like, our clients are being vulnerable enough to like ask a question or want to get to know us, or like in this case like
Yeah.
physical touch, which is like vulnerable. That's
Mhm.
vulnerable. I don't
Mhm.
think we give it enough credit. I'm not gonna shut my clients down.
Yeah.
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 I wouldn't initiate it,
Yeah.
but I would accept it. Accept isn't,
Mhm.
yeah. Like, I'm happy to hug.
I accept your hug.
Accept your
I will
initiation.
accept. That feels so transactional.
No, yeah. I feel like that's it very much depends on the moment that you're in or the vibe you're getting from the client. But yes, I agree. I would never be like, oh, can I hug you? Like, oh, no. I wouldn't ask that. But if a client was like, oh, can I hug? Or like they like reach their arms out, obviously trying to hug me, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
I also have had it. Well, oh, and what I was going to say about that is such, I'm seeing that as almost like a bid for connection to your therapist of like, can I have this level of a relationship with you and it still be safe and like within the therapeutic like confines?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that's fine. I will have clients to where they're not huggers, but they still want to have some kind of connection like that with me. So I'll high five. When I was doing in-person therapy, I would high five people. Or I have a client that we salute each other every session. We say, all right, see you later. Salute. Like that's just what they wanted to do. They didn't want to hug. And that's okay. But they did want to have some kind of like almost ritualistic goodbye type of thing or a hello type of thing. And I think that's cool to find your version of that, even if it's not, you know, what you might expect.
Finding what's comfortable.
Okay, cool. Maybe that wasn't such an ethical gray area. Sounds like we're all pretty
well. I
think the feedback is.
I think we'll see what the feedback is because I feel like we are mostly pretty ethically aligned on most things, and it's not. I don't know that we will ever cross wires in that way. Maybe we will. Maybe we just haven't found it yet. But I have a feeling
someone's bound to disagree with us on this.
I think someone will disagree. I just don't think it's going to be one of us.
Ooh, okay.
There'll always be someone who disagree. But
if you disagree,
to hear
I'd be interested to know.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know why. But yeah, I think it is up for debate. Speaking of up for debate, our question for the week. Woo, woo, woo. We have such a cool, Avery, you don't know what this question is. I didn't fill you in ahead of time.
No worries.
So you'll be surprised. But we got the coolest question this week, which I will read to you now. It's a little bit lengthy, but it says, I no longer go to the therapist who I've been seeing for about a year. She impacted me tremendously and was the only safe and supportive person I had in my life at the time. I still think about her and find myself wanting to reach out through email just to voice my gratitude for a final time. I would not expect a reply from her and would not feel disappointed by the lack of one. I'm curious what your thoughts are on clients reaching out to their therapists after termination. I feel like it's often discouraged and framed as overstepping boundaries.
Oh.
Whoa.
From a therapist perspective, I would love to hear a year later, 2 years later. That is probably one of my favorite parts is when clients will reach back out, even if they don't need support, just saying like, hey, this event happened, right? You're invested in their life in a way. I'm speaking for like my own boundaries. I would love from a client an update.
Yeah. Initial reaction, if you're not watching this episode, the initial reaction from all three of us was like sad face, but like in a really like, oh, like that's so sweet kind of way. Like that's so special. And what a cool question, I think, to be curious enough to want to ask our opinion on that. I have a feeling you're going to get a really unanimous opinion on it, just given all of our reactions to that. But Erin, go ahead and tell us your thoughts.
My thought is send it immediately. Immediately. I would love that. I think especially I do this with my therapist. So my therapist recently, in the past few months, took a job in like corporate America, and we are so happy for her. She's an HR baddie. She got a really, really cool opportunity, and we are so happy for her. And so I will, like, she knows so much about my life. And there are things that like we were working on that were like kind of in the works when we stopped working together, that like when I think about like the list of people that I want to tell when things happen in my life, she genuinely is one of those people. And so I will still update her on things, and I just like if things are going great in your life, you know, like your therapist wants to know about it. I think, not that there's a misconception necessarily, but I think therapy can be so heavy and is so much about exploring, like, you know, the harder, rougher edges of life. And so I think therapy is also to learn to fully like soak in and celebrate your wins, and celebrate when life is just like really, really going well. And so I would absolutely, if I got that from a client, I would probably cry and tears of joy and then email back and be like, oh my God, I'm so happy to hear that you were doing so well. Thank you so much for sending this. So that's my take.
Yeah. I feel like every therapist, I would hope, gets into this work because they want to help people, because they want to make a difference in someone's life. They want to help improve someone's quality of life, whatever it is. And so for you, listener, questioner, you want to share that feedback with your therapist, I don't think that would be perceived as overstepping. I feel like that, if anything, is so validating and like encouraging to your therapist. Not that it needs to be, but I feel like it has the added bonus of that would probably be really, really well received. That's something that is so special to hear. And I don't know if y'all have ever gotten feedback like that from a client, but I have. Every email I've ever gotten like that lives in a little folder on my phone, and I go back and I read them sometimes. And I'm like, oh, that means so much to me that they feel that way, that is the experience that they got from our work together. Like,
well, I feel like it also goes into the question of like, does my therapist think about me? You know, like how, like as a client, like you think about your therapist, and it's like, I still think about, I could probably tell you every single person that was on my caseload when I first started seeing clients. And granted, I haven't been practicing for years and years and years. And so as I go on, that might be harder to do. But like, and I think about them. Like, I think about them often. I think about all of my clients often. And so I think there's also a little bit of like weirdness potentially in the question of like, if I email my therapist, like I haven't seen her in like them in like a year, will she, they, will he, whoever it is, will the therapist even remember me? And it's like, yes, I think about my clients and wonder, the ones that I am not working with anymore, I think about them often.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear from them, any one of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I feel like it's kind of in line with the idea of like, I really want to go see my therapist again, but I like ghosted them a year ago and they might not want to see me again.
Yeah.
They probably do. They probably will.
They probably would be so happy to hear from you.
They would be really excited to hear from you. And I think if that would bring you, person, some like closure from that therapeutic relationship, then I'm all for it. And not that this is therapy or any advice that I'm, you know, soliciting, but
just to
the legal of it all. This isn't advice, but I feel like you know yourself best. If you feel like that's your intuition, that would be closure for you, I don't see the harm in that.
I also, and
you will.
this is maybe something I tell my clients, so I don't know what y'all think about this. I always say it's an open door, right? Of like, of course, there's termination and we go through all of those phases, but then to say you're always welcome back at any point if things come up in life. And I think that's such a wonderful part about being a therapist, is seeing people through multiple phases of their life during multiple challenges, joyful experiences in life. And so that's how I always leave it, is come back anytime you want.
Yeah, my door is always open. I feel like that's so comforting, especially from an attachment standpoint too, of like, okay, this person is there. I don't have to see them every week for them to still be there for me. Yeah, I love that question. Okay, do we feel good? Any other things that we did not talk about yet?
This is great.
I'm about to pee my pants. I have to pee so bad.
And in line with everything that we've been talking about.
To go full circle,
Actually,
am about to have a problem. But I am so glad we got to have the episode that we got to have today. Thank you for
I
asking
know.
that question. And please offer more questions to us. We'd love to talk about what you want to hear. Cool. Well, thank you for listening. We will see you very, very, very soon.
Bye.
Bye.